Hey, welcome. If you're this far down in the program, awesome, great job. We're really going to start to really hone in on Rome research now, the software. So I'm joined in this particular training by the one and the only Kyle Stratis. Kyle, thank you for being here, man. It means a ton. I'm pretty sure that people that have gone through the rest of the program, they're definitely wondering about Rome right now. And I think everything else is pretty easy. Instapaper, hypothesis, all these other things are kind of like, yeah, there's like anything that you install and you use. Rome is in itself a universe, I would say. So I know that people probably have questions and they kind of want to see what does a Rome database or graph look like that's filled out. And the reason why I reached out to you is because you've really done an incredible job, I think, of not only building out a great instance of Rome for yourself, but also you're a great teacher and a great instructor. So, yeah. So thanks again for being here. And before we even get started, I want you to just kind of tell people where they can find you, what you've got going on.
Yeah, so I write a lot, so you can find me at my personal website, kylestratis.com. If you're interested in Python coding at all, I also write for realpython.com. I write a lot of tutorials and things like that. And I'm on Twitter, Kyle Stratis, GitHub, Kyle Stratis, super creative names that are really hard to remember.
I like it. Yeah, and your blog post, the one that you just, I think you just finished up. It was a three-part series.
Yep.
That was very good. I just been going through it. I need to go back further because there's a lot of depth there. But it's basically like sort of your informational operating system, how you deal with info coming in and processing it and where you store it and all that stuff. So that's a good read. I'll probably link to that below in the course. Okay, so what I kind of want to do, this will be pretty low key. We're not going hardcore, but I think what people want to see is how does Rome look for you? What do you get out of it? How do you use it? And then we'll go into some cool features. I think we had talked beforehand about maybe showing how you manage projects, how you use the Kanban board or any tables. I think there's one more thing, but I'm sure it'll all pop up when we get out there to it. It always feels like we're about to dive into an ocean, you know?
Yeah.
And there's also that fear too, like, I hope I don't show something not that I shouldn't show, because
Yeah.
this really is our personal lives. This is everything. Most of us
Yeah.
don't everything in there, so you never know what might pop up. So if anything does, just let me know and I'll blur it out.
Sounds good.
No big deal. Okay, so with that being said, if you want to do a screen share, maybe we can get started here. And let's start with just kind of how you structure your day, the way that looks. Oh, yeah, like you see,
Yeah.
you got the dark theme.
Oh yeah, everything I have, dark theme, everything. Cloudy days, perfect because doesn't hurt my eyes so much. So yeah, I'm actually a big fan of this Rome themes extension. I change my theme every couple of days. It's available for Chrome. Uh, Basically all these dark themes I really like. I was using Hypnos for a while. Cosmonaut's a good one. I think this one is actually better Rome research, but it's in dark mode, which is nice. So when my day starts, I use Alfred. I'm on Mac. I've written a few workflows. They're available on my GitHub, github.com/Kyle Stratis. If you use Alfred, you can use these. I use some Python code to generate dates. And so what I do is I do my keyboard shortcut. I have these daily mantras. So what I'll do is I'll just open this in my sidebar, and I just have quotes here from books and anything else. They're usually block references back to my highlights, or they just have um, some link to the writer and the work, and you can see kind of just general things that I need to kind of remind myself day to day. And then I also have this ridiculous thing at the end that just kind of ends this whole part with a little smile on my face. This is a real Dunkin' Donuts sign. I live in Boston; they're everywhere, and this one was particularly good. So,
Do you add to these and tweak them as time goes on?
Yeah, so as I read something that I find particularly inspiring, I think that's something I want to remind myself every day of. I'll throw it in here. And like I said, either I'll type it up directly or it'll be a block ref to a highlight. And so like this one, this refers back to my notes on this book. And this one is called The Carpenter. So my highlights. And so I can go back and look at all my notes for this book. And this is a book just about leadership and things like that. And you can see some of my early metadata for these books, but I guess we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's just the power of the block references I find really useful. And the sidebar is great, so you can kind of review things as you're starting your day. And then after this, I have a few of my kind of daily habits that I want to make sure I'm cultivating. So these are metadata attributes. And so these can fill in an attribute table on their own. And I don't use it too much because it's a very early alpha. So, but it's just there in case, once that feature gets built out a little bit more, I'll have a really nice habit tracker already built for me. And so like when I exercise, I'll write, okay, worked out my chest and triceps today for 36 minutes. Reading books for pleasure. Usually I'll just put a link to the book here. So I just recently finished The Hero of Ages, and that will show up there and also in the table. But what I also do is my habits are also part of my weekly plan. So in this query, you'll also see like my bass guitar. So I'll check that off, then put what I did up here. It's kind of a convoluted system that's built up kind of organically over, I started using this back in April. So you won't, don't start like this. You won't have to, but you'll start to see little things that can help you day to day, and you'll just kind of build up this whole structure on your own.
Yeah, I think if you could real quick, because I didn't go over this in a ton of detail because it's pretty advanced, but just for the people out there thinking about it, can you kind of explain just briefly, and because I know it gets complex, the query section and kind of why you chose that as your, one, what is it again? Just kind of recap it, and then two, why did you choose that, and what are you searching for?
Sure. Yeah. So queries allow you to pull out specific blocks that have certain attributes to them. They mostly for page, if there are page links or tags, you can pull those out of a single block that have some combination of those. So this query, I got this from, it's slightly tweaked from Effortless Output V2 with Nate Eliason. And so this query right here is any block that has a to-do. So this little checkbox is actually a page link to this to-do page, but not anything that has either overdue tasks or archives, and the date is between today and today. So the only date kind of stuff you can do with queries right now are between queries. And so this just limits everything to something that either has a to-do date on that block of today, or is on is a sub block of another block that has a link to the day's notes. So you can see here, one of the results is begin this article. This is something I'm writing for Real Python. You can see that it's nested under this Monday, October 12th, 2020 block. So that's how that gets pulled in. And then these overdue tasks or archive, I have another query that generates overdue tasks. And so this makes sure that we don't pull in anything else from other dates.
And the archive is stuff that you got, you don't need it right now. It's gone.
They're basically to-dos that I decide I don't actually need to do right now, but I don't want to check them off as done because I didn't actually do them. So what I would do is if I say, okay, today I don't plan on practicing my bass, I'm not going to mark that done because I didn't do it. So I'll just go #archive, and now it's gone.
Yep.
And
the query updates in real time, because this is you're truly editing the database, instantly.
Correct. Yep. And so these are actually these are really cool because this isn't on this page at all. These are all embeds from different pages. So I could go back and look at the page, do the same thing, and it would go back, or I can edit the block directly, and it will go back to where the actual block lives. This is just kind of a display of blocks that are somewhere else in the database. which I really like about the queries. And so this is for tasks. I have another query further down for overdue tasks, and it's similar. It just kind of the same thing, but we look at tasks that had a date from yesterday until last month. And as you can see, there's a there's a task here in the future that shows up. So there's one of two things I can do. I can just give it the future tag and it will go away. A user in the Slack for Roam also created an extension. I don't know if you're going to get into those at all, but you can
Eventually, we'll add them in.
What's that?
We will, but I'm waiting on that one because I know it's a lot.
So maybe you can cut that out. I won't go over that, but I'll just talk about how you can. Same thing as with the archive. I'll just add future to this, and now it doesn't show up. It's not overdue task, so there's no need, and it actually should show up somewhere in here. Let me see if I can find. Oh, yeah, and here it is. The only downside with these tasks is that you can't kind of manually sort them. So when I go back and look at my weekly plan, I have things already prioritized. So sometimes I'll just open my weekly plan in the sidebar and go see, okay, I want to watch these videos first, and that's the first thing I'll do. But this gives me a quick kind of dashboard of what I want to get done for the day.
That's very good. So if you're a copywriter and you're writing ads and things like that, this is a little bit advanced. This is beyond where you're at, but I think it's important to start seeing what features you have, because for example, querying, if you've done a lot of copy in a certain topic, you could search for that and find everything you've ever written on that topic. And that's what makes queries so good, because obviously, yeah, if you're going from page to page, you will find these things. I mean, they are interlinked, so you will have a much better odds than if you're in like some other platform. But there may be times when there's stuff you don't even think about, things that you haven't thought about in a year or so, and that's where querying can come in. What I like as well that you do, which is something that I want to get to, is the weekly planning. I pretty much do a daily planning, but I like that. So you kind of spend some time before the week starts, maybe Saturday or Sunday, and just kind of map out your week. And it seems like you even create your futures too. So you create, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You create those dates out, and then you start dragging things. Do you actually drag things under them and put your to-dos in there by the day?
Yeah, so my process with this, again, I use Alfred for this, so it uses some Python code that I wrote, and will calculate the correct dates to put in. So I have this tells me, which week it is. It gives me a link to a weekly review. So at the end of the week, I'll go through and do this weekly review, which I also have a template for. And that just shows me everything that I marked done over the course of the week. So I can go back and see what kind of high impact items I've done, think about what I did to achieve what I did and what I could do better. And I have a few kind of canned questions there that I'll answer. And it just kind of forces me to think about how my week went and how I can improve that in the future. And so that's what that weekly review is. I'll do that at the end of the week before I create the weekly plan for the next week. And then I have these pages to reference. So it's kind of to remind me if I don't have a lot of stuff to bring in for the week that kind of rolled over from the previous week, which I almost always do. I'm very ambitious and never get everything done. But
same.
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that pain. So what I have here are a couple of page links. So my to-dos, goals, my writing inbox, which we will talk about soon, projects, article ideas, research. We'll talk about kind of that whole flow. And these are all things that will have either project ideas, things I want to write about, evergreen notes that I want to take or form out of stuff that I've read. And so I can kind of scan through these and pull stuff in. These usually end up being block references. And so this make concise bullet point roadmap. This is something I'm doing for the actually information operating system article that I wrote. I'm going to add kind of a big summary to my public database, which will be part of my website soon. But I can hop over to this. Actually, I'll open it in the Sorry about that. I can open it over here in my sidebar, and then I see, okay, this is under the right summary to do. This is my plan. And then I can also open this entire thing in the sidebar. And this is kind of my whole article plan for this series that I wrote. And so I have Trello cards. I used to use Trello cards for this. I'm basically all in Rome for it now.
Yeah.
How I published it, the Medium links, personal blog links. This is my whole plan that I'll set out when I'm starting. And so what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I want to publish this part soon. So you just right click, copy block ref, put it here, and then add an extra to do. This is just for queries sake. If you just have this with this to do, it won't come up in the queries, so you have to add an extra one. No big deal. Hopefully that's something that will be fixed at some point. But yeah, so I bring in these block references, and then when Monday today rolls around, it'll show up in my queries, and I'll know kind of what I want to get done for this day. And so I also make a list of top priorities. So these are a few different projects that I'm working on. Rome Lab is a thing that I'm working on about how to best use multiplayer Romes in the sense of building a small community. This is an article I'm writing.
I definitely need to talk to you about that because I'm trying to build out
Yeah.
a writer brain stuff. Because that's one of my concerns ultimately is how do you control it if you open it to people to not just go in and just erase stuff or do anything like that.
Yeah. The thrust of this, a very quick preview, is just that the idea is to kind of go in the reverse from social media where you have these huge communities that aren't really around anything. It's just because everyone's there. They're very loud, they're very noisy, can't get a voice out. This is kind of an idea of going back to the smaller communities. If you're active online at all in the 90s, early 2000s with bulletin board systems or the PHP forums, you had these like small, tightly focused communities, and it was really easier. It was a lot easier to kind of get ideas out, get your opinion out there, whatever it is. And so the idea with this is to use Rome and some other tools in concert to kind of build these small focused communities where people can kind of have free reign to build and work on anything they want. And so you can start on a project over here and, so-and-so's working on this project over here. I'm going to go over here and start helping out here because this is interesting to me right now. And the idea is kind of people have free reign to contribute in whatever way they feel like they want to at the time. And so kind of the point of the smaller communities, you help kind of rein in those destructive behaviors a little bit because there's some accountability when you know everyone who's a part of that community. Yeah. So the idea of kind of like a community garden, I think is a really good analogy there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I pull in a couple top priorities. These are just page links, and then I can go and pull in some to-dos from those as I work on my day. As you can see, this is a week where I'm trying to close out a lot of things. So I just brought in all this stuff from last week, and I'm going to focus fully on knocking these out before pulling anything new in, because I pull new things in all the time. It's a bad habit, and then I get overwhelmed. So occasionally I'll do something like this, pull everything in, just try to close out the week, and then the next week I'll start pulling in a whole bunch of new stuff. And then I also have this daily habit section. And so I have a page link to each habit, and then it just auto generates one for each day. And you can see archive. Okay, I decided I'm not going to meditate today. If I do it, I'll mark it to do from my daily page. And that will show up here, and I can just kind of track how I'm doing on all of my different daily habits I'm trying to cultivate. And so this is what my weekly plan looks like. Most of my interaction with it is when I'm either first building it out or doing a review at the end. My main interaction point with all my to-dos is really through this kind of daily notes dashboard up here.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One thing too that I enjoy that you do, which I need to do a better job of, is I see that you pick out a lot of emojis, and that's very good.
Yep.
It definitely helps it to stand out. Like as I see your favorites, it just makes it look cleaner and more organized. And I mean, obviously Rome was never designed by anyone with a design, side.
Yeah.
A bunch of programmers got in and built this, but it adds a little bit of something, there.
Yeah. I noticed when I first started, it was all kind of like this, no emojis or anything like that. I started kind of peppering them in there because, like you said, it breaks it up a little bit. It helps certain parts stand out. And what I look at the most are these ones, all these with the emojis. So it ends up being kind of good little attention grabber.
Yeah, that's great. So, guys, I'll jump in and just say this. Like, obviously, Kyle's been doing this for quite some time now, and as he said, this was not his day one structure. And as time goes on, you can build up. And maybe this will never be you. Maybe you don't need to go this far, but it's important to see different uses because I think the more you see, it may trigger an idea for how you want to structure something. Throughout the course, I didn't focus as much on project management, or I'm sorry, on task management. But obviously, that's a big component of what I think makes Rome very special. I didn't want to overwhelm you, so we kind of didn't go too hardcore into it. But you can see now how much you can do. Like you can truly put uh, everything in here, your whole life, pretty much every aspect of it. From I've even seen one guy, um, Nat Eliason, uses Rome in a really unique way where he puts recipes in there and tags the ingredients where you can then do a query search for what you have in your house, and it'll spit back what foods you can make with what you have. Because it'll say this one requires chicken and onions and paprika. So if you do a search for those three things, that recipe will appear. So I mean, really, you can do anything, and that's what makes it good and bad, right? Because then when you can do anything, then you have to really start thinking a lot more about what should you do. And that's kind of the process. And I would say it's probably a good 60 to 90 days of playing before you start seeing things, and you meet cool people, and you jump on Zoom calls like this, and they show you what they're doing, you show them what you're doing, and you kind of trade notes, and you'll see that as time goes on you'll improve. And then that's the whole premise of copywriter brain too, is that we're going to be making it better. So as you discover things, please share them, and we'll share with the whole community. That's kind of what I want to build out longer term. All right, so let's where do you want to go next? We have projects, we got the flow of things. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, so I think what here's the roadmap I'm thinking. So we'll look at goals real quick. It's very basic, but I think it's a good kind of framework to have these more long-term things that projects can feed into. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of go up. Accidentally clicked that. Sorry about that. We'll kind of go up from the reading list, things to process, and we'll go up kind of this whole path and see how things kind of come into Rome and how I filter and process them throughout.
And this is what we call sort of the knowledge factory. So you've got your inputs on one end, and here you have your inputs, and then way over here you have your outputs. So like just seeing it, you can see you've got the reading list. That's where things come in, and then you have like articles or things like that, and that's going out, or the writing inbox. That's where you're creating it from what you've brought in. So yeah, so guys, for us, that's very similar. We're reading articles and case studies and testimonials and all those things, and we're bringing them in, and we're processing, we're organizing them in a way with tagging, and we're using them to write copy. So even though he's not doing the same thing, it's the same kind of structure. Just kind of see how he does it, and that'll help you as well.
Yeah, and I think Rome's great for like every aspect of life, as I'm sure you do too. And I think as you start to use Rome more, you'll see all these other areas you can apply it. It's a very simple goals page. This just kind of keeps track of some of the things I want to do. I have kind of these near-term goals. I want to revamp my personal blog, which is mostly done. Start a newsletter, which is done. So yeah, I add this done hashtag so it won't show up in some of my queries. This idea lab framework, this goes back to that Rome lab thing I was just talking about. So these are just like things I want to learn, kind of career goals that I have, educational goals, all sorts of things. I'm programmer. It's my main day job, so there's a lot of programming stuff on here. And then long term is like, I want to buy a house eventually, but I live in Boston, so that's definitely a long term goal. I want to learn OS level programming, but I don't need that for my job or anything, any projects I have coming up. So it's just like kind of a wish list sort of thing. And then this is some brainstorming stuff that's, as you can see, is from like June when I was just kind of starting to use this. But it's a very simple thing. And then I'll go to this revamp person. This is a good one to look at because I've used it. So when I look at a specific goal, I have related projects. So these are some things I had to learn. I have the actual project of rebuilding the website, some things I want to learn, and all that. So I have all these related projects. So they're all underneath that goal. The status of the goal, what my success criteria is. So when can I call this done? So the blog has to be upgraded and deployed. The link that Michael showed earlier is basically the upgraded blog. I have a couple of things left that I want to add to it, I'm almost there for this one. These are some tags. So anything that's related to this goal, I'll put here just so if I want to query it in the future, or if I want to look at other goals that are similar and that are related to this one, I can do that. Reference, this will go any sort of articles or anything that will help me achieve this goal, what I think my necessary steps are. And you can see these are all to-dos, how I want to, whatever I want to do with the site. And then I haven't used it here because the projects that are within the goal have kind of all this information, but I like to keep this journal header, and that's just kind of a day-to-day. I can say something about the goal or even the project. I use this journal header in most of my templates, and that's just kind of what I need to kind of think to myself and write out what I'm doing, what I'm frustrated with, what I'm getting distracted by. That becomes a good thing to look back at. And the way I use the journal is I'll put in the date, and then I'll put something here, and then I'll say it's now Tuesday, and I'm going to write something. I'll put it on top so I have the most recent stuff first, and I'll just say Tuesday and put something else there. So that's kind of how the goals work. They don't get touched as often, obviously, because even though short-term goals are kind of a longer-term process that consists of a bunch of different projects. So the next thing I think we'll look at, let's look at the projects next. We'll take a look, we'll do kind of a deep dive on what the projects look like, and then I'll go back through kind of this whole flow where projects just one of the outputs.
That'd be great.
And so I really like this. I started using query results. So this is the Kanban board. I'm sure some people are familiar. Basically, it's just a board with some columns on it and with items that, depending on their status, they're on a different part of the board. I try to keep it very simple. So for projects, just waiting, in progress, done. And the way you do this in Roam is, see if I can get it to edit. And nope, it's not going to do that. That's okay. So basically, the way you would do this is, let's go to the end of it. You do /Kanban, and then you put your statuses underneath. So I'll just put like test here, and now I have a new column, and then anything you want to put under test. I apologize, that's not very readable. That's just the theme that I'm using. This is a card. And so it's hard to see. Let's make it a link.
Yeah, it'll be
it's a little easier to see. Yeah. So, and I also make the statuses links usually, as you can see here. But this is all just done by bullet nesting. So that's how you would do it. And so this is a pretty interesting case, or interesting use of this. I really like doing this with the query results, because that way I don't have to come back to this projects page and update things manually. Things will get left behind. I keep track of statuses on the project pages. So what I do is, so each query, let's go to waiting. This is easy to see. It's just a query. It looks for status, which is an attribute for every project page that I have. Waiting, so that's the actual status that will be on that same block as status. And then I also add personal, and projects to the status. So one of the weaknesses with querying is that it only pulls back single blocks. Um, if you have status and then tags, and you have, say, personal and projects in the tags, and then status waiting on separate blocks that are at the same level, the queries can't pick that up right now. So it's a little ugly, but what I do is I put all of that stuff that I want to query on in the status attribute. So you can see for this project, it's all here. And what will happen is, as I'm working on something, I'll update the status, I'll change this to in progress, then the appropriate project will move over to in progress. So I'll do that right here with this one. So this is an actual page. I'll hop to it real quick so you can just see, and I'll go into the whole template soon. Actually, let's do that right now. So real quick, I have a type. So this is, it's a project, due date, completed date, status. It's a personal project. It is a project. This is just for querying, and then the actual status. Any goals that this is related to, I'll put here. Success criteria, very similar to the goals. Tag, overview. And this is just a template. And this is a reminder, hey, this is what I want to put in the overview. What question am I trying to answer? What the success is, what the current state is, just so I can look at it at a glance. Any lessons learned. Then resources, project plan, that's kind of a step-by-step to-do list, questions that I have, and journal. So very similar to the goals. This, again, is something that I kind of built up organically from seeing how other people do things and seeing how deficiencies in my own project management come up. Part of that's doing that weekly review I talked about earlier. So this will accumulate for you over time.
When you're done with it, you mark it done. If it gets paused or held, you would put, maybe archive or something else.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Sam, I've been working on this, and I want to make sure I have to put this in progress because I'm working on it. I'll do that in here. I'm not going to go to the projects page because I don't really, need to, or I might forget to. So now that it's in progress, we go back to the projects page, and now we see this Roam Lab Seed Pack Marketplace project is in progress, is in this column. So it's a little ugly. You can't, so one of the Kanban features is, so this is a regular Kanban card. You can move it. You can move a single card. I screwed something up there. It's okay. So you can grab a card and you can click and drag it to a different status. So you can do that.
When you do that, it doesn't actually change anything though, right? So you still have to go manually change waiting to in progress or done, right? It's only changing it in the bullets, right? The way it's nested.
Correct. Yeah, and so you can't. So with the query results, you can't do this. This is all one card, but that's okay because in my workflow, I'm never changing anything manually over here. I'm just changing it on the project page because that's all the hub for the work for the project is that project page.
This is more for you a visual, just to kind of see it. Yeah.
Yeah. If I want to look at my projects at a glance, I'll use this. And that's pretty much it. That's the beauty of using these queries. And so they just, like I said, they live under each status and everything is right there. Really easy once you kind of get it into your workflow. But, I didn't start with this. I didn't even start with the Kanban board. This is just like a list of stuff I wanted to do at first. And as I went through it, kind of updated it. All right. And so I think a good next step is to kind of show how I bring kind of everything into Roam and where it goes, that knowledge factory that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really do think of it as a factory. I think it's because I was playing a lot of Factorio recently and seeing how things kind of branch and move around to different logic. According to different logic, kind of made that analogy fit. So the first, I have all these kind of main parts in my favorites list. It just kind of helps visualize things a little bit better. So this first one is the reading list. I actually just recently added this, so I don't have my full reading list on here. This is just for books, ebooks, anything like that I can't just kind of throw into Instapaper or Readwise. And I'll talk about that soon next. But just so I can keep track of the books that I'm reading and what they what kind of all the statuses are on them. It's kind of the same thing. It's a query-based Kanban board, and I'll hop into show what book notes kind of look like for me. I use a mix of progressive summarization and forming evergreen notes kind of all together. I've seen both people use either one or the other. I kind of combine them depending on what my goals are, and it will change from article to article, book to book. But Rome's nice because it gives you that flexibility where you can kind of pick and choose what methods you want.
Yeah, just to ask, because I just finished the book, How to Write Smart Notes, and I'm still struggling to visualize it, and so what's the flow of the Smart Note process or the Slipbox? There's fleeting notes, literature notes, and then evergreen. Am I skipping one? I think there's one more.
So the evergreen note process is kind of an evolution, I think, of the Zettelkasten that's in How to Take Smart Notes.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the exact flow, and I've kind of, again, mine's kind of all cobbled together too. I actually when I started with Rome, I started trying to implement Zettelkasten, and it didn't quite work the way I wanted. And I discovered Evergreen Notes, and that's kind of where I've been going.
And that's the goal. The goal is to end up there. Evergreen's the end.
Yeah.
With your Evergreen Notes, which basically Evergreen Notes, just for those who haven't studied it, Evergreen is basically like notes that you wrote that are basically atomic in the sense that they're kind of about one thing, and they could be drag and dropped anywhere and sort of make sense. There's enough context to them where they stand alone. So you wouldn't want an Evergreen note to say like, this is important. Like what's important?
Yeah.
You have no clue. So it would have to say something like progressive summarization is important strategy for finding the highest quality information in an article. And that's it. And that can be one evergreen. You can do more than that, but that at the very least give you something that you could then use in the future. So from a copywriting perspective, it could be statistics, it could be data points, it could be references to case studies, it could be testimonials, because that for us could be an evergreen thing that we would use. Again, would be the results that someone got with a certain supplement. I lost 8 pounds in 3 weeks. Great. Now we have that. We have what the product is, and we drag it in, and it can be used. So that's kind of what I want you guys to think about is how do you turn repeated copy into blocks or into evergreens that you can use again and again, or at the very least will spark you to write something else based off of that. And there's a lot of people that write entire books of just collections of their evergreen. That's all they do. And they add stuff here and there, they tweak it. But in general, this takes you away from that big fear that we all have, which is writing from scratch, right? No one wants that.
The worst.
So this is worse. So this is where you build up, you build up, so you've got something to always start with. And so yeah, the How to Write Smart Notes. I think their process is you basically read something. Now it was written a few years back, so it's like you read it and you write down thoughts as they come, and then you go back and you turn those into literature notes, which is like kind of recapping, I guess, in a way. And then you ultimately convert those to evergreen notes, which is in your own words, I guess. But how do you do it? So we kind of can understand that.
Yeah, so it's pretty similar. So what I start with are highlights and notes. And so here I use a header for each chapter. So the introduction, chapter 1. And I use the slash shows a namespace. So this shows that introduction belongs under quantum entanglement, and that's just the title of the book. And so these are highlights that come straight from the book. The way I do this with dead tree books is I'll take pictures of each page with Readwise with the mobile app, and then actually make the highlights that I've written in the book itself. So when I read, I try to have a conversation with the authors. So I'll write questions in the margins. I'll highlight things I find important. I'll figure out what the important terms are. And this all kind of goes in right here. So when you have a note on top of a highlight, I have note, and this is actually a note that comes from the book itself that's related to this. And then I have the page. And so these are highlights. And so what will happen is when I'm done with the book, I'll go through and I'll start progressive summarization. So I'll go through, and if I see something that resonates and that's important, the first step would be to highlight it or bold it, either one. So you can just do this, and then you go back through it later, or you can do this all in one step. The idea of progressive summarization is that anytime you find yourself coming back to the note, you do one step of summarization, starting with this bolding and highlighting. So then the next thing would be to bold, and let me see. Yeah, so you can highlight and bold, or bold and highlight. I think of the way Tiago does it is bold and then highlight. If you do that within Rome, there's some kind of bug where you have to remove the highlight before the bold and then add it again. And so whichever way works.
Yeah, it's a pain. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to like open with a bold and close with a bold or something like that.
Yeah, it's a weird pain, but
They'll
I
fix
guess
it. They'll fix it eventually.
yeah, exactly. And so, terms, I'll usually have a page for them. So locality and realism are two assumptions that are violated by quantum entanglement. And so this is just kind of a definition, my note on it, etc. So this is early stage. I'm still reading this book. So what will happen as I go through this, and I'll show some examples of something that's more fleshed out later. I'll do literature notes. So this is just a note to myself, like this is what the literature notes are. And these are basically any of my notes, commentaries, thoughts, whatever, that are kind of tightly coupled to the actual piece that I'm working on. And so these can become fodder for transient notes or ideas or anything else, or they just sit there on their own. They can be useful on their own. And so,
just to ask real quick, your highlights, those come in, I'm assuming, from either you handwrite them or you type them in, or they come from Kindle if you read it on there. How are you getting them? Do you just kind of copy them over from wherever they come in, wherever they import from? You just run everything.
Yeah, so I use Readwise for everything. So their export to Rome is fantastic. This is actually all generated from Readwise, from my Readwise template. And so what will happen is, for a book like this, Readwise has a mobile app on iPhone and Android, and you can just take pictures of the page, and it will recognize the actual text, and you go through and highlight in the app. So while I'm reading, I'll underline or put a star or write a note in the margin, and then I'll go through after reading a chapter and take pictures of each one, highlight the notes, type in any of my notes to go along with that, and that gets sent to Readwise. And then that will turn into a Rome page automatically and export to my Rome database when Readwise does their daily update. And I use that for articles too. So when I'm reading an article, I'll usually put it in Instapaper. If it doesn't really fit with Instapaper, I'll use an extension called Hypothesis and take my notes that way and do all my highlights and notes. That also will come into Readwise and auto-generate a Rome page for that. And depending on the type, it will do all this, the status, in progress, things to process, reading list, or whatever. Whatever's applicable, Readwise will take care of that for
me. So you feed in this whole template through Readwise in that little section where you add your tags and stuff. You code all this in there.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I didn't know you could even do that much.
Yeah, their Rome export's super powerful. There's some logic you can do in those templates that you build with them. And so, there are some things where it's not perfect. So when it comes in, this H1 won't be there. It'll just be like a hashtag space, the thing. So you have to do a little, once it first comes in, you have to do a little massaging. But other than that, it really speeds up the time to intake information. So I mentioned this things to process. Everything that comes in, Instapaper, whatever, has this things to process tag. And so there's nothing really special on this page. What I'll do is every day, I'll spend about half hour to an hour going through this, and I'll pick up an article that's waiting and things to process. And what I'll do is let's uh, let's look at Vinyl Moon. This is an article in Tedium that I read. And so this is what it looks like right when it comes in from Readwise. You can see the headers aren't quite there. It's not indented quite right. They don't handle that just yet. So I'll just go through and do this, clean it up a little bit, and here are my highlights. And so one of the parts of processing is I'll go through, bold, highlight. If I see anything that's inspiring or interesting here, literature notes, transient notes. So literature notes, like I said, they're tightly coupled to the piece. Transient notes, I try to go back through the literature notes and anything else and see if there are broader concepts that aren't specifically tied to this article. I may have sources in this article that have led me to write this transient note. So what I would do here is let's just do this is a transient. Okay. I'll add a waiting tag to it, and we'll see why in the next step, which is my writing inbox. I basically use the same vocabulary for statuses for everything. So waiting in progress done, or waiting in progress processed. So I'll do that, and then say there's a highlight. There should be one or two highlights that act as sources for this transient note. So all I'll do is copy the block reference, paste it here, and now I have the highlight, and I can go back to this one exactly. And this will follow the transient note around wherever. And then the other thing I look at are ideas. So this is anything that I call it ideas. I think inspiration is better. It's a little clearer. Excuse me. Actually, do you mind if we pause for a second?
Yeah, sure. You talked.
I just need to get some water. So ideas, probably better called inspirations, because ideas is a little broad of a term. But this is anything that kind of strikes me while I'm reading this article. Usually I write it in a note as I'm reading the article. And this is anything that was inspiring to me. And I'll do the same thing. If there's a specific quote that goes with it, I'll add a block reference underneath it. So it's all associated together. And so these ideas can turn into projects. They can turn into article ideas. They can turn into research topics. So maybe there's something I want to investigate more. Maybe there's like a business model here that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'll write it here, and then I'll add it to my research. It'll actually go into my ideas page and writing inbox. I'll do the same thing here. I'll write the idea, then put waiting, and because it's underneath ideas, it's linked with ideas, and it's linked with the waiting status, and that will go into my writing inbox as such. So that's kind of my processing, and then as I continue to summarize it, I'll either, depending on the length, I'll do it either in one shot. I'll do the bolding, highlighting, and then write a summary, or I'll do it over time and kind of build that up slowly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too that I think people should understand. Rome, especially, it's really built not to do everything at once. It's really built to kind of be a discovery engine in a way. And as you rediscover and discover things, you kind of fix it as you are there. You don't have to feel the need to, unless you have a pressing deadline, you don't have to fix everything right away. It's going to be there for you.
Yep. And another thing I meant to mention is that these transient notes will start getting page links. So if there's an overall concept that I'm linking to, I would write, let's say, something about subscription business model. I just do that in quotes. And now if I go to the subscription business model page, it's there as a reference. I have this link. So when you talk about discoverability, making sure you're linking things and making references is the best way to do it. And then transient notes, especially, this becomes important because a really good evergreen note, which I'll show towards the end, is very densely linked. So I only have a few, but every single concept that I can pull out of that has a link to a page. So when I go back and say I'm researching, let's say subscription business models, and I have a few evergreen transient notes, I can just go to that page again, pull them out, and now I have, kind of the foundation of an article already done for me. So yeah, that's what things to process looks like. And then once it's done processing, I'll change the status to like process. And then because I haven't finished necessarily with the article, but usually an article end state is processed for me. Once I do the kind of the first stages of highlighting and generating ideas and stuff like that, and I'll remove the things to process tag, so it no longer shows up in the link references in this page. And so yeah, all that comes in through Readwise, and then every day I'll look at this things to process inbox and take a few articles and kind of just go through them and see what strikes me. And then the next step is the writing inbox. This one's again, this is something that is very, I don't want to say personal, but it's very like individually oriented. So it just kind of depends on your workflow. You'll build these up. Shiomi kind of introduced me to the idea of a writing inbox. He does it kind of differently. And this is super messy. Your stuff in Rome is going to be messy. That's okay. Let it be messy. That's kind of the beauty of it for a lot of these things. And so this is kind of a quick rundown of everything that comes out of my reading. It all kind of goes in here to begin with. So I have this page for research topics. So this is a query. If it has the research tag or is the child block. So as I saw, there's a child block. In each article, there's the research or the ideas page, and then underneath it, that's where my ideas go. That association gets made that way. And so when you query for, say, ideas and the weighting status, it will show up in the query. Same for research. So I'll have a research idea, and I might put it in my daily notes, but as long as I put, research and weighting, it will show up here in my writing inbox. So I set aside about an hour every couple of days to go through all of this and kind of see if I want to process anything or start something. So my research topics page, very simple. So you'll get these, you'll get some of my ideas from my research page Kanban board. And that's pretty much it. And so I have all these different, Siamese networks idea. So I would go with, this page, and I can start, doing some research, directing my readings on Siamese networks, which is a machine learning concept. So the research page for me, or the research topics, what I'll do with these is when I'm going through the writing inbox, pick up something and I'll have that direct my reading. So when I'm researching a topic, something, again, I set aside about an hour every couple of days to do. What I'll do is I'll pick a topic and I'll just look for articles on it. I'll start Googling and I'll dig into Wikipedia, look at sources, look at PubMed even, and that I'll start pulling in articles. And so I'll just save them to my Instapaper. I don't have to start reading them right away. Usually I'm just trying to gather stuff, the first step. And then once they're in my Instapaper, I can go back, read and highlight them. That'll go into Readwise. That'll go into Rome, into the things to process list. And kind of that cycle starts again for each article.
Yeah, and I can tell you this: you are never bored.
Nope.
You're bored, and that's the thing too. That people say this all the time, but then you never believe it until you build it. But literally now, you have more to write about than you ever even could. Yeah. Like you end up getting the opposite problem. It's like, man, what am I gonna not write about? Because I got like 40 things I would like to go do right now, but I can't. So and it does really build up. And from the copy side, it's going to be very similar. You're going to be getting tons of great stories, tons of headlines, and all these ideas. And as long as you're tagging them properly, you can run queries, you can find them. I did want to ask you one quick thing. Is this a table? This is just a query straight up.
Right.
What made you use a Kanban over just a regular table if you don't drag and drop anyway?
Yeah. So so this whole writing inbox is kind of a collection of different pages. So the research topics, the transient notes, ideas, and all that. So this is kind of the first step. Excuse me. This is the first step for everything. And then ideas will turn into, say, projects or article ideas, which do have a Kanban board. Research topics have one. I don't use it as heavily for research topics because for me, research is generally ongoing. But maybe there's something I've lost interest in. That's pretty much the only case. I'll put it in done. So it's kind of like in my daily notes, this is kind of a quick dashboard to look at things. So when I go to process this writing inbox, I'll clean this up a little bit. I'll look through my transient notes. This is kind of the star of my writing inbox. And so I have all these different, all these different transient notes. Or I don't know why not sure why that one's showing up. I think there's a bug in my query, but this is a good transient note here in this article I read on power in the valley, and talks about referent power and kind of these conceptualizations of social power and how they apply to venture capital and startup financing and things like that. And so this just has weighting. It's under the transient note, so it's a transient note. And as I go and learn more about, say, referent power, I'll get more sources that go under this this transient note, and then that's when I start to build the evergreen note. So what I'll do when I go to process, I'll look through these and see if there's anything that relates to it in my previous reading that maybe I didn't remember to link, or maybe I did link something recently and I added a highlight. So this one in Conway's Law about organizations and how they interact inside, within. I have a Wikipedia entry. I have this highlight from an article. And so what I'll do is I'll continue to build this out to get a full definition of Conway's Law and how it applies. And it'll be very densely linked and have a bunch of references to it. And that becomes an evergreen note. So kind of the goal when I'm processing this inbox is go through my transient notes and see what is ready to become an evergreen note or what I need to do to turn something into an evergreen note. And yeah, so you can see there's like a whole lot of stuff here. And then my ideas page, again, this is a quick dashboard of ideas. Not everything's going to be on that ideas page. So I'll find something, put in quick capture on my daily notes, and okay, I have this idea of I want to use Roam to prototype data pipelines. I just throw out my quick capture, which is a mobile entry, give it weighting and ideas. And now when I go to process my writing inbox, I can look at this idea and be like, okay, this is something I want to kind of work on. Let me make this into either a project or an article idea or a research topic, any of those things. So this is kind of one area where I can look at all of these things that come from my readings and just ideas, inspirations, whatever. I can look at them all in one spot and then groom them for what kind of more focused thing they are, whether it's a research topic.
I really like this a lot because I deal with this problem. I have like article ideas and ideas and just like random ideas I throw in there, and this basically puts all of them into one area, so you're not having to go to 4 different pages. Or here's my book ideas, here's my article ideas, here's my podcast ideas. You can maybe have it all in one area and then process them as you have time to. I'm gonna play around with this for myself because I'm probably only 2 or 3 months in Roam myself, so I'm just getting to the point where I'm starting to realize that I'm terrible. You know what I mean? I'm like, I thought I was good, and then I'm like, oh, I'm terrible. But that's the process, right? The process is you're building, and there's still a part of me because I use my own system since 2006. So I brought a lot of that over, and there is a lot of manualness to it, which I sort of justify it in that I enjoy that daily routine for me. But I'm seeing now that really I can automate a lot of it the more I go, which I probably will. but it's just going to take me time because I have to. Well, one, I guess I'm just old now, so the older you get, the tougher it is to want to change. But I see this as very, very powerful because you can combine things. So, like for example, from a copywriting standpoint, this could be a page of all of your sort of big ideas. So in copywriting, we come up with these big ideas, which is like sort of like you would call it like the theme of the piece. I know it's weird because we're just selling stuff, so you don't think we think that hard, but we do. We have to come up with like this big idea, which kind of connects everything, and that's the stuff you'll read about. Like you probably read those cheesy, Amazon jungle fruit, solves whatever problem. Like we've got to be constantly coming up with this most unique story, unique angle, some kind of hook, because we're all selling the same stuff. We have to make it sound like it's the first time you've ever seen it, right? So right. You got to find your big idea, and then you just pound that through the whole time. You bring it up again. So that's where you make your most income is off that, because anybody can write like a vitamin C piece, because it's like vitamin C does this, it does this, it does that, and they can all say that. But if you could turn vitamin C into like the secret of an orange found in Himalayas, you know what I mean? Like that's what you need. You need that weird twisty hook to pull people in. This would be a good use case for that. Is anytime you get some harebrained idea in your head, throw it in here, tag it, waiting, ideas, or transient, or big ideas, transient. And then they'll all be there. So if you get a sign to write some new piece and you're not sure how to start, scroll through here. You might find something that you came up with when you were drunk one night. You just threw it in there, right? It might be the thing that you might need. So I like that a lot. If we could, because I know you've been going for quite some time, so I don't want to keep you for too much more time, but can you show us, is there an evergreen note you feel comfortable to show, just to kind of show your sort of, because I guess we've been building up here, right? This is like this is like what you're doing all this stuff for, is you're creating your own sort of unique ideas that are based off things you researched.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. So this is my evergreen notes page. I don't really do anything too much here. As you can see, I just threw in a little transient note here. When I'm done with the transient note and I've turned it into an evergreen, I'll add this process tag. But this is just a quick way I can go look at the linked references and find an evergreen note. So let's see. This is a good one. I've been doing a lot of reading about the unbundling of social media. And so this, I use a single page with a very detailed title. So I read an article, or a short note actually, by Andy Matischak. I'm probably butchering his name, but he has a really cool website where you can kind of dig through his notes that are networked in a Rome-like fashion. And you can go through all his ideas, and he does a lot of writing on evergreen notes. And he has one piece on for anyone who's familiar with programming, he calls a good evergreen note an API, an application programming interface. What that is basically, the idea is that it's something that makes the node itself extremely discoverable. So the title itself should have a lot of content, a lot of density. So if I'm looking, I'm like, I was looking for something about advertising as monetization or something. I'll just type in advertising or monetization and this will come up, or social media growth. This evergreen will come up. And so all that's here is the actual evergreen, the title, the evergreen note, and you can see kind of these concepts in different groups, so Patreon and Gumroad, then the concepts of social media and advertising are all linked. And this is the actual node itself. I have some tags that just helps with discoverability. So passion economy, unbundling. And then here's some reference. Actually, I want to see what this little star here, this is a block reference. And so you see, okay, this is actually a highlight, the passion economy. Why not? So some I'll have in line so I can kind of explore things a little more, because that's just an example. And then an actual reference that informs the the note itself all goes under this references section. And so I have this social media is increasingly noisy. This is actually another evergreen note. And then I have some highlights here and literature. I think this is a transient note. So advertising is a poor income generator in the passion economy. The payouts are variable and require large audiences. So this is a block reference. So I can go and open this in the sidebar and I can see, okay, this came from the passion economy, why now article. This is a transient note. And then underneath that, and that could, obviously you can see it's carried over here as well. These are the references to the highlights. So I made a couple of highlights for this particular article, and that's where they come from. But that's not my only reference. My other reference is this other evergreen note, social media is increasingly noisy. So it can hop to this one, and this one's even more fleshed out than that one. What I think is a good title, it gives me the thrust of what I'm talking about, so I can just look at the title itself and kind of have a good idea. And then I have kind of this longer, note about this whole process of social media being noisy, drowning out most voices. So people are kind of pulling back and making more specialized communities. And so I have a bunch of different things here: interest-based communities, Pizzagate, conspiracy theories, social media, internet, interest-based communities. I have all of that there. And then I have some tags, evergreen note, so I know it's an evergreen. That puts it in the evergreen notes page. Yep. Unbundling, so this concept of large things kind of coming apart and unbundling. Social media, loneliness epidemic. So if I want to search for one of these topics, say I'm doing an article about the loneliness epidemic, I'll search that first, and then I'll see this, and there's a nugget of an idea for an article that I can use, or a whole section of an article could be that. And then I have, a transient note, and then a bunch of highlights as the references there.
Yeah, and I want to bring up a very important point here, because this is what makes Rome so special, and I think goes against what we think of naturally. So we would think naturally evergreen note, when it's done, you picture in your mind, I'm going to drag it over and put it in the evergreen notes page. Well, you don't have to, right? Because it's linked, it's referenced. So evergreen notes as a page is really just like a heading that pulls in everything else. And I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts that you can make in Rome, is you don't have to be the one to order everything. You don't have to bring your hierarchical system in. You don't have to say, oh, this is an evergreen note, let me put it on the evergreen notes page, or it's a transient note, let me put it on the transient note page. That was the mistake that I made when I first got started. I created like a page for articles I read, a page for books I had read, a page for projects I was going to do. And it turns out, really, I didn't really need it done that way. Like you can create that page, but you don't have to put content in that page, other than content for yourself to perhaps help you understand it and what it's there for. But in reality, as long as you're using tags, then you're good to go. You're going to find everything, and you just kind of view that main page as sort of as your entry point into that category.
Yep.
I'm not saying that to you, obviously, that, but I'm saying more for the people here, because again, and it's going to take time. You're going to start, you'll play around with that, and you'll see how things go. But that's very cool. I really enjoy that. And I want to just personally, I want to hear a lot more from you on this, especially the BBS stuff, because I think that is so neat. It's kind of like when the internet started, there was such a coolness to it. There was such a community vibe, and it was very interesting. And even me, I remember going on these chats and just meeting cool people. I don't know how much of it is nostalgia, versus reality, but it definitely felt like there was a realness to it and authenticity that seems to be not as available. And maybe it's just because the volume has just gone up so high that there's not been a system designed to handle volume while keeping the community aspect. And I thought for a while it seemed like it was going that way in the sort of early 2010s. It felt like there was more of a niche thing going on. But then around 2014, 2015, it just seemed like that all died out and everything went back to the big guys, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's not, these little pockets anymore of community, or if they are, I mean, probably the closest we have is Reddit, but it's gotten so sort of extremistic. It's like you're either this side or that side. There's not a lot of crossover. And for me personally, there seems like there's a very negative vibe there. Reddit, I'm afraid to ever say anything because I think you post something, you get insulted. There's that sort of, you never know what's going to set off someone just the way you ask something. So, I almost just stay out of there because I'm just afraid of getting hit. So, I hope you can work on that because that would be a really, I think, and not just cool, but an important thing too. I really think people need that again. We need something like that.
Yeah, I think we'll be seeing a lot of that, and I think we'll also see, and we're seeing it now. And I mean, I know we see it kind of in the Roam community and the personal knowledge management community, where people who are either building products or putting out knowledge, like say Nat Eliason, they're building communities around what they make. And so you have these like really tightly focused communities that by necessity are a little bit smaller. But I think that kind of helps the signal to noise ratio out a lot. And so you sidestep a lot of those problems with social media by kind of uniting the high focus, whereas Facebook is just like whatever you want to say and spout. You don't have that on these like more focused forums. And then two, this community is around a specific, it's smaller. Like Nat Eliason, the stuff he teaches is kind of niche. So, people who are kind of united in what they want to do and what they want to achieve will join those communities, and you'll have like weaker links to other communities, but they won't be so like overlapping of each other that they're like tightly connected and there's too much crosstalk. You'll have kind of these weaker links, which are probably better. I have an article on here from Cal Newport, and this is a good use of Roam. You can look up something like this. Came to me. This article from Cal Newport, the subtle network science of optimal office design. So this is about office communication, right? And how network science can inform how offices are organized to kind of arrive at a problem, especially engineering offices. But there's a deeper point in this about well-connected networks, and this is going to become a transient note. I just need to spend some time on it. Actually, I do have a transient note of poorly connected networks allow more parallelism in finding a solution, arrive at a better consensus with more time, with a little more time than a well-connected or frictionless network does. And if we look at the references, we have all this. It's hard to see with the theme, but these are just some of the highlights that are down here that I summarized. And so there's this idea of networks in general, if they're kind of weakly connected, there's less cross communication, but the quality of that communication is better because there isn't a strong link. And I don't think that applies just to office communication. That applies overall network sciences for networks in general. And this is another, I'm going through this kind of, weak connections thing to demonstrate the power of Roam to generate ideas and to show you connections where you wouldn't have noticed them before. From this conversation and from using Roam and from writing these transient notes, I remember, oh, hey, this idea of unbundling communities has some kind of crossover and some kind of connection to this article about the subtle network science of office communication, because this is how networks connect and how they communicate. Now, if we're looking at these unbundled, weakly connected networks, so we're looking at, say, Tiago Forte's community that he has, a couple people are also in some, maybe barely related. Maybe they play an instrument and they're a part of that community too. Maybe there's a connection there between how that connection works versus a social media connection where everything's jumbled together, and what this article finds about how that same kind of connectivity affects network or office communication. And so this gives us fodder. Using Roam like this gives you fodder to make those connections and to take these kind of thoughtful leaps. and build these connections and research these connections. And maybe you find something here that's really interesting to write about or to think about or to build something about. And as you can see here, this note itself, this transient note here, in this article, I have this is informing my article, Rome as a Platform for Community. And so you can see all these, this is an evergreen note that's informing this article. This is this is an idea, I think. This is a project that's part of this article. And so Rome becomes this like really connected network that can help you surface and connect ideas that you wouldn't have thought of on your own, that they just reside in different parts of your brain. So that kind of rambly sort of thing, I hope shows how powerful Rome is.
No, it does for sure. And it applies directly to copywriters, because oftentimes that's where we're doing our best work, when we connect sort of two apparently disparate things and bringing them together, into something that's new and unique, either through combining, subtracting, dividing, multiplying, that whole concept. But it definitely helps a lot. And I guess just to end it, because I know it's one last thing we did want to say. If you could show us this, and then we'll call it that. I think you've given like so much value, Kyle. This is crazy. This is like a master class in Rome. You were going to show us one thing, which was how to use version control. And I haven't quite figured out how copywriters would use that. It could be a way to split test. Like we come up with different headlines, and you were going to show us maybe an example of how you do that. I don't even know if I covered this in the main course, but you can create multiple versions of the same text. And if you ever work with other people in the same Rome, you can, I believe, create multiple versions for different people even. So you can see who created version 1 and who created version 2.
All right, so yeah, I think versions are really powerful. I use them when drafting articles. So this is a set of my notes for the information operating system series of articles that I wrote for my personal blog. As you can see, I have a bunch of tags, status, all that. I can actually set this to done. This was supposed to be a single article. That's why it's in one page. Generally do one page per article that I'm writing, but I had to split it out because it just got really long. So I have my plan. I have how I publish. Just the publishing part is actually a template. So I do all the checks that I need to and things like that. So when I'm going through my process, when I have a draft, what I'll do is I'll take the first, let's go to the first version. And so I'll go to this first version that I'm writing, and I'll copy and paste it, and I'll put it all in Grammarly just to help clean up my writing, make it more approachable and things like that. So I'll have a whole new batch of writing, and I'll do some formatting stuff as well. Having it in Grammarly and not looking at it in Rome itself for that is helpful, because looking at a piece of writing, I think in a different environment really helps you look at it with a fresh set of eyes, because now all of a sudden your brain kind of thinks of it as a different piece. And so what I do after I go through that whole kind of Grammarly process is I'll take that, I'll take all that, and then I'll make a new version. And so when you add a new version, and the way you do that is you just go here, you right click a bullet point and you go add version. Or if you're on that page, you can just do control comma, and you'll get a new version. So we'll just use this, and it's all blank. So then I'll copy and paste my new version in, and now I can look back, and if I need to pull anything from the first version, say I didn't like copy an image or something that I had, so I have this image here, that doesn't come through with Grammarly, I can go back, grab that link, and then I'll just put it in here, and that's there. And so this is really powerful while you're writing. If you go through any sort of review process, whether you're doing it yourself or you have editors or anyone else that's helping you with this, when you go through a round of changes, if you want to preserve the original versions, which I think is useful to do. You just create a version under your draft, and then you put in, the new version, and you can very easily kind of hop between them and see either what changed, or see, oh, maybe I forgot to pull in this sentence or this paragraph. You still have it. You're not removing anything. You're not losing anything by making an update. You have every version there.
That's very cool. Yeah, and this really applies well because many times we'll write a first draft and we'll edit it, have a second draft, and then depending, you may do a third draft. I love your hack there because Grammarly, it's installed on the Chrome, but it doesn't always work very well. I've had a lot of trouble with that. So you kind of bring it into the Grammarly.com site, clean it up, and then put it back. What I was going to say though is we usually have to have a third party edit for compliance. So you get a lot of feedback. Can't say this, can't say that. Take this out. You can't guarantee anything. You got to redo all that. So that becomes a version as well. So I think it's quite cool, especially for copywriters who want to teach, because they can go back and they could actually walk people through. I started here and I ended up here, and here's why. One thing I really wish Rome would add at some point is the ability to comment. I really think that'll be big, because many times you want to add something, but you just can't. It's just not, it eats up, especially stuff when you're trying to write something, it'd be cool to be able to comment. I'm sure they'll get that. It's probably not that hard to do from a structural standpoint, I don't think. Well, of course, I always spoken like a non-programmer, right? I'm sure you know exactly. That. You know, that was easy. Just go do it, and it's like, hear what you're saying.
It's anytime you hear that, it's usually like it's going to be harder than I think.
I always push my programmers well beyond what I should, and they're always like, "All right, Mike, sure. All right, sure." I'm like, it's easy. It's gonna be so easy. Just go do it. Just code it in. Yeah. I've learned. Oh yeah, so that's really great. And that was actually, I don't, it's kind of sad, but I haven't really studied it much because I thought it was going to be way harder than that. I don't know why, because I only read about it from the keyboard shortcuts, and it sounded really weird. You had to like jump around with the Control L, Control C, Control this, Control that, and really, it's very simple. I mean, maybe they've updated it some since I last looked. So that's great. It's really easy.
Yeah,
and that plus sign, you can just add more and more and more and more. And I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, you can just keep adding your new versions and hop around. It's real nice. I like it a lot. So I use it pretty much primarily for my writing projects. So it's great.
Okay, well, I've got to let you go. I've kept you so long. You probably went through 3 or 4 drinks, and we gotta wrap. This has been amazing, man. This is like truly. This is going to be one of the most valuable parts of the course. I think people are going to start seeing now what can be done. And I think they're going to start seeing that Rome is a lot more than just a little copywriting software that, for research. It does so much beyond that. If you have questions for Kyle, I mean, he could probably even be open to do consults and stuff. Reach out to him, KyleStratis.com. Obviously, you can see like he knows his stuff. I think the programming background really helps a ton. I will say that I have seen some of the coolest Romes come from people that are programmers in some way, because they think in that way. And Rome is itself very programmatic right now still. So, if you need help with that kind of stuff, I'm sure he'd be thrilled to, get the chance if you have things that you would like to do. I may even talk to you about some of the Python stuff, although I'm not Apple, so I may be stuck because I can't use Alfred. But anyway, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Check out KyleStratis.com. And again, just incredible stuff. So thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and end this call. And man, you've given so much. So again, thank you.
No problem.